Okay, if you're ready for me, I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to bring up here momentarily, but real quick, I just wanted to mention that this is more of a continuation of Monir K6AQ's talk from about a year and a half ago. And let me share the screen real quick. All right, go from the beginning. There we go. His talk was Winlink Gateways on the Cheap, and this is going to be pretty much part two of that. Monir did an excellent presentation on on setting up some of the hardware, but mostly on setting up the software, which I'm not going to get into because that's been well covered already by Monir. His presentation was on February the 28th of 2021. I highly recommend those who have not seen it and that want to do this go to that one first, and then if you want to refer back to this one, you certainly can. Other things that we're going to kind of cover is, but first of all, I'm going to specifically with VARA FM Winlink gateways. I'm not going to get into HF on this at all, or any of the HF links to VARA FM gateways. I want to talk a bit about some of the barriers that that I ran into and that other people have questioned me about regarding setting up the VARA FM gateways, both software and hardware wise as to where to get all the information and so forth. And then I'm going to go over and spend some time. And all this is more of a blunderbuss because it's going to be all intermixed in here. What we at VCARC did at the Valley Center Amateur Radio Club, because we've set up 3 of them so far. One of them is not fully deployed, but I'll go over that. And I want to spend some time with the hardware and software requirements. But I'm not going to get into the setting up the software for these, since that's been well covered before. And then, of course, people want to know about various hardware sources and so forth. All right, the barriers. Now, this is my opinion, and this is my opinion from experience, is that when I first started doing this and looking into it, I said, where is all the information? I would go from one source to another source to another source, and only bits and pieces of the information were there. I never found, when I was doing this, I never found all the information in one particular location, and it got to be a bit frustrating. And I can see those. I mean, I am no great engineer or so, but and I know there's others who would like to be able to do this that don't have a big engineering background to know, oh yeah, here's what you do, there's what you do. Let's get some more, you know, a point and click kind of information. But here's what I found were probably the best sources. And let me go through why I put Valley Center ARC at the end right there. Winlink.org is an absolute must. This is where you're going to get most of your software. You're going to get your Winlink Express, the RMS packet, and the RMS relay, which are the three programs that are going to be required for setting. Well, 3 of the 4 programs that are going to be required. I found that the Central Valley Digital Network has an excellent discussion on setting up the software. The Ventura County ACS Aries Communication has an excellent discussion also on setting up the software. And you're going to get the 4th program required for VARA FM from the rosmodem.wordpress.com website, and you'll download, and it's a free download. However, to get your higher speeds, you're going to have to pay for a licensing. Don't be cheap, just do it. It's well worth it, and it helps support them as well. because I had such issues with finding all the information, I put it all, every single bit of it, out on our website at valleycenterarc.org. I went through all the hardware and the specifications. I went through the software setup, everything step by step, so somebody could go directly to that and be able to set everything up. The only thing I didn't get heavy into, because there's other sites right there, which I've discussed, which set up all of the software. And again, go back to Monir's discussion on setting up the software for the VARA FM. Now, what hardware to use? Other opinions that people have had or they've expressed with me is that, hey, it's very expensive or it's unavailable. Yeah, that's very true. Probably the go-to radios, and we're using one of them. They have the Alinco, the DR135, the 235, and the 435s. And as you know, the 135 is for the 2-meter, the 235 is for the 1.25 lambda radios, and the 435 is for the 70-centimeter radios. And for the VARA FM gateways. I believe this is what Monir uses also, and our N2DDS10 uses one of the DR435s. And when I ordered that from Joe at HRO, he said this is the last one in existence any place in the United States to be able to purchase retail. And I told him at the time, and I said, no, it doesn't exist anymore because I own it now, and I will buy it from you, but it is mine. Anyway, these are no longer available. The 135 is, I understand, and I may not be accurate on this, even though it's still available, it's what they have in stock that's still available, but Alinco is not manufacturing them. I may be wrong on that. These are just things that I've heard is just gossip. Right now, they're currently selling at $175 at HRO. So they are going up in price. And yes, if you want to go on the 2-meter band, that's fine. Those are great radios, and they're very easy to implement. There are a lot more radios available, but they tend to be very expensive, like the Yaesu, the Yaesu radios, the Kenwoods, and so forth. Now, so the question is, and Kevin Walsh, this kind of goes to you. So you probably want to know what is available and relatively inexpensive and reliable and for the 70-centimeter band. But the question is, why the 70-centimeter band? Well, I believe that Monir agrees with this. In fact, I agree with him on this, that the 70-centimeter band is a lot quieter than the 2-meter band. There's wider bandwidths are available. You can go all the way to the 9600 baud. I know I'm going to have arguments on that, but I believe, in my opinion, that is the case. Also, there's a lot more band space available, especially at the low end where our repeaters are located. I'm claiming space down there right now for our put quotes around claiming for our gateways, but there's plenty of room down there to set them up. You're going to have a much harder time finding room for the 2-meter gateways. And we find that on this, that more than 20 watts is more than enough, and especially at altitude. And our two of our repeaters are about as high as you can get on Palomar Mountain. Or what we need to do is, and subtle hint to everybody, we need to set up more VARA FM gateway systems. They can be fairly low wattage, 10 watts, and so forth. But if there's more of them available, then we don't have to be using the 3 or 4 that are available, that are out there, that are fairly easily accessible. Now, just so you can kind of see, this is kind of a bit goofy. Can everybody see my cursor right here? Okay, this is on Palomar Mountain right here. We have both N2DDS10 and N2DDS11. They're about 1.5 miles apart from each other. And the problem is the booger of this whole thing is, and why they are where they are, we have Birch Hill that sits right in the middle between these two. So we cannot have a link and cannot talk between these two systems. Now, my home, my QTH is right here in Valley Center. And now, so the coverage is kind of right here. We can get a little bit further to the north. There are people over here that can reach it. In fact, Mattagway out here can reach this some of the time because of it bypasses some of Birch Hill and kind of gets into a little area right out in here. But this is kind of it. Now, there's some areas down in here, like Rob, for example, who said he has a hard time. Munir can reach it, but there's a lot of people down in here because of the mountains, Black Mountain and so forth. Marty, AF5T, cannot reach either one of them, and he's right over here in this area because of the mountains that are right here cannot reach this. So what we're doing is we're setting up another one right here in this area is High Point, which is at Double Peak or at Mount Whitney, whichever one we can get there. And that will cover probably everything from here all the way down in the coast. And anyway, everything in here that cannot be reached by N2DDS10 or 11. Now, we get an idea. This is what I'm guesstimating is going to be covered by N2DDS11. So we can get all the way out here, and all of these areas in here, Alpine and so forth, should be able to be reached by N2DDS11 without any problems. Now, I can reach it from here. So there are some pathways that come over into here also, but it's mainly this area right in here by N2DDS11. So this is kind of the sweet spot right in here for both of them. And Fred, GRO is what I'm hoping he can test N2DDS11 when he's down in these areas, and to make sure that he can receive it down here as well. Now, the current VARA FM gateways that are on 70 centimeter is N2DDS10, which is active at 431.070. N2DDS11 is also active at 431.050. Now, let me just interject here for a moment. My mistake, but according to Mike Burton, I shouldn't be having any problems because they're far enough apart. These are only 20 kilohertz apart from each other. And we're on wide band, so I was afraid there might be a little bit of interference, but we're running low enough wattage and they're far enough apart, and it hasn't seemed to have been any problem. We are taking into DDS12. You'll see that show up every once in a while on the VARA FM. You'll see that show up once in a while when we're testing it. It's going to be at 431.100. So we're far enough. We're 30 kilohertz away from N2DDS10, so there should be no interference issues. And Munir's VARA FM gateway K6AFQ10 is at 431.020. So I wanted to make sure I didn't interfere with him here either. So these are the only 70 centimeter gateways in our region that I'm aware of. Nothing else seems to show up right now. Everything else is on 2 meters. And again, I'm not overly pleased with 2 meters personally. If we can get more, and almost all of the 2 meter gateways are narrow band. These are all wide band, which means we can go the full 9600 baud.
So just to butt in for a little bit.
Sure, please do.
I believe some of the XC2BC 2 meters gateways are set up for VARA FM wide. But that may just be because Mexico has different rules or anything like that. But it 70 centimeters does allow us, if we were to ever set up a 9600 baud packet for some reason in the future, like 70 centimeters would let us do that versus like 2 meters where we would only be able to do 1200 baud packet.
Cool. Thank you, Munir. Hey, feel free to butt in any time because this is partly your talk too. Okay. All right, now I'm just going to go over some things to consider. And again, these are all things that I had to consider when we were putting these together, and the research that I did, and some of the and what we did. Anyway, location is extremely important, where you're going to put them. Obviously, the higher you're going to be able to get, the better. But that's not always going to be able to be the case, in particular if we could put more VARA FM gateways out there. And I know there's people on here that said, gee, Manise, I'd like to be able to do this, but A, I can't afford it because we're talking about a few $1,000s to set these up. And I'm going to say, that's not the case at all. But anyway, the things to consider is on the environment is security. If you're like us on Palomar Mountain, and then when we go over to install the third system in San Marcos, these are going to be in remote locations that can be accessible by other individuals. And we know, as much as we hate to admit it, we know for a fact that there are certain hams out there who are a bit, I don't know whether they're jealous or what their issue is, but they'll go in and they'll damage repeaters and they'll damage systems. And if they, long as they know where it's located, it gives them access to it. So both of our repeaters on Palomar on private property, and it's going to be difficult for somebody to be able to access it, and they're under lock and key. But on the other, even though it's going to be on private property, a four-wheel drive can get to where these are located, and they could be damaged. So just be careful of security as to where you locate it. It's just things to consider. Other things too is if it's going to be outside, you're going to have to be sure it's waterproofed. Our two on Palomar Mountain are inside. The one that's going to be on San Marcos is outside. So we have to put it into a waterproof container. If we go with a cheap plastic container, which would work, now we've got security issues to be worrying about. So we're going to have to go with either a steel or a stainless steel container that gets to be very pricey. So we're still trying to figure that one out if we can get indoors somehow. Temperature control and monitoring, and we all know we've had some major issues. Now maybe those that live over on the coast haven't worried too much about it, but we have a lot of temperature issues, and it gets hot, and these radios get really hot if they're used very much. And on Palomar Mountain, during the hospital drill we just had, into DDS10, because I can see these in the log, had 84 transmissions from the thing during the hospital drill. And when I was up there, it got hot, very, very hot. So we have to consider keeping these machines cool, particularly the radios, keeping them cool, but then also the environment. If you have them in a small container, a small case, it's going to get very, very hot in there. So you're going to have to consider the cooling aspects and keeping these things cool. Fortunately, N2DDS11 is in a fairly large room that's up at over 6,000 feet. And so it stays fairly cool. Even when the temperatures down here were 110, 115 degrees, it never got above 90 degrees up there. And N2DDS11 is not used nearly as much as 10. And even though we're in a vault up on N2DD, up on Palomar Mountain, we're still relatively cool, but I do have cross ventilation with fans in there to help keep the whole thing cool. But what we do for monitoring it is we use the sensor push. I really like this. This idea came from Brian, KC2GNV. So we can look at on our cell phones, we can look and see what's the temperature, what's the humidity looking like in these vaults or where we're located. So we're able to see. I recommend going this route because if the temperature starts getting too high or too low, if it's too low and you're using Bino batteries for backup, they tend to not be as effective, and they get damaged trying to charge them. If they get too high, that damages equipment that's in there. So this is a way to remotely monitor, because I'm presuming, I mean, if let's go back, if you putting yours at your home, like Munir's is at his home. But you're not going to have to worry about security too terribly much. People aren't going to get into there. But if you're on Palomar Mountain and you're one of these other locations that are going to be hard to get to, like it takes me an hour to get up to Palomar Mountain from Valley Center, even though it's only 12 miles away. It takes me an hour to get there because of all of the twists and the turns and so forth. And during the winter, they close the mountain up there often or sometimes with the heavy snows. But you still want to be able to see what's going on and being able to monitor it. And if it goes in around, I got some other things we'll talk about that you might want to monitor. I'm into monitoring stuff, make sure that it's all working. All right, the computer. And now there's a couple of things that you can do. Here's a couple of examples. All you need are two USB ports. You need a video port and you need an Ethernet port. We'll get into the wireless part of it, but but you need to have that Ethernet port one way or another. We use the B-Link. And our club is paying for all of these, and they're being paid through grants and so forth. So I know Kevin's getting a grant or has a grant to be able to put his system together. But these are inexpensive ways of doing it. The B-Link is on Amazon right now, new for I think $110. There's other ones out there also that are these small little systems, and I know Mike Burton was using the Intel NUC computers, little micro or mini computers that are running about $500 plus retail, but he's been able to find them on eBay without all the bells and whistles for about $100. So they're comparable. However, the B-Link already has enough RAM and enough disk in the thing to be able to run VARA FM fine. The others, for the $100 or so, most likely, or many times, you're going to have to add anyway, be able to add all your memory and so forth. Now, first thing you're going to need to do, and these are kind of the issues that I ran into. During the setup, you'll have to go to the BIOS, and you're going to have to set the BIOS up for auto power on with a power cycle, because if the power goes down or you lose power and it comes back on, it won't come on automatically, and that's what you definitely need to do. You want to turn, and this is where I ran into problems, and I'll explain this one in a moment. Turn Windows Update off and disable it. Both of those are critical, and that's all done in the services.msc in Windows. During the hospital drill, I had forgotten to do this on N2DDS11. And it happened to be during that hospital drill that wonderful Windows, Microsoft decided to do an update. So that just shut the whole system down. Even though it came back up, you have to reset the whole system in order to go past the Windows update. So I went back up there the next day and in Services MSC and shut the Windows update off and disabled that. So anyway, that's extremely critical, and I know others have forgotten to do that too. And but I guarantee that it's going to happen to you at 5 minutes to 5 on a Friday afternoon when you can't get to your system. Okay, automatic login to Windows, and you use your registry editor for this. Now, by the way, all of this information, when I just say use your registry editor, go on about it, say, well, wait a minute, where do I find how to do this? If you go to our website, the valleycenterarc.org, I have a step-by-step is exactly how to do this. You'll have to look for it. It's fairly obvious. You'll have to look for every one of these things to be able to go step-by-step as to how to do it. You're going to have to add all your Winlink apps and install them and have them run automatically. You're going to install the Winlink Express install, which is what it's called, the RMS packet install, RMS relay install, and VARA for FM transceivers. Now, the first three you're going to be able to get, as I said before, from the winlink.org website. The VARA FM for transceivers you're going to get from the ROS modem website. But it's very important to get all these apps to start automatically. And that's in the shell startup that you'll go to that. And again, on our website, step by step is exactly how to do that. So you don't have to guess at it at all or try to figure it out. Now, power systems. Obviously, the whole thing needs to be powered. This is a simplification of the whole thing, but these are things to consider. Now, this is very simple. And the computer, the B-Link that we use, doesn't like voltages, right here, doesn't like voltages above 12.5 volts. So it kind of dies at 13 volts. Sometimes you can get it up to that, but it's got it just will not even start. It likes 12 volts, and that's it. The NUC system has 19 volts, but we found that it runs very nicely also at 12 volts. So you can plug that directly into your BioEno battery or into your backup battery system, anywhere between 12 volts up to 19 volts, and it works very happy. So you don't have to have a boost power supply to bring it up to 19 volts. If that's for the NUC. Other ones, I don't know. You can experiment and try if they'll run at 12 volts or 12.5 volts. And our radio again runs fine at 12.5 volts. So on these power supplies, there is an adjustment in the inside, even though they're not advertised as such. They are adjustable, and you can adjust them instead of the 13.8 volts that they're preset at. You can adjust them down to the 12.5 volts. N2 DDS11, this is the setup we have right here. It's very simple. No battery backup, because where it's located, the power is completely clean, and the power has not gone off and the vault where it's located for the last 5 to 6 years. So I'm pretty confident that it's going to stay up for a while, because it's at a location where the it's all on solar backup, and the power is on 24 hours a day. So I'm very confident that we're not going to have to worry about losing power, and the power is highly filtered. There aren't any other radios around, so we can operate our radio. We can operate the USB. And we'll talk more about the sound interface card right here in a few minutes. And those who are familiar with the DRA50, you're looking at that and say, wait a minute, that's not a DRA50. And you're right, it's not. Okay, this is a very simple system. Now, just as a caveat, say your radio requires, let's not do that. Okay, now here's another simple system with a battery backup. this obviously is going to have to be, again, you're going to have to adjust it to, if you're going to use the bi-anode batteries or any of the lithium ferrous phosphate batteries, they like to charge at 14.6 volts, the plus or minus. So you're going to have to adjust this power supply to the 14.6 volts. Well, this computer doesn't like it very well. The radio doesn't seem to care one way or the other, and the battery likes it a whole lot. So we use the Epic Power Gates right here. They're what, about $180 or so, but it's well worth it, because if you ever did go to solar, you can plug solar right into it here. And we use 3 of these up on Palomar for the N2DDS10 and our 2 repeaters up there. We have 3 of these up there for each of the batteries, 1 for each of the 3 bi-anode batteries, and we have solar power for each of the bi-anode batteries. So these work out perfectly. And if you ever decide to switch out the battery for AGM, which is a little bit cheaper, or any other kind of batteries, you can do that. These power gates with a jumper on the inside, you can set these to charge any of these batteries. Now, the problem is you got the 12 volts. What you're going to have to install right here is, I'm not necessarily saying this is what I use, but there are several of them out there that are about $3 a piece on eBay. I like the Buck Boost, so you can put any kind of voltage in here. If it gets too low or too high, it'll adjust the voltage to 12 volts for the computer, and the computer's very happy. This particular one is a buck power supply. So with anything from like 12.5 volts and up, this will get you your 12 volts coming out. Also, the 14.6 volts, the radio's very happy with that. Okay, let's move on. Now let's go over real quick your internet connection. Unfortunately, right now, we have to use the internet for this. Now, wait a minute. I'm not going to get into, I said I'm not going to get into the HF connections and the HF links. So let's just pretend that that we have to use internet for right now. And at some point along the link, yeah, internet's going to be used. Wired Ethernet is probably the most popular common one, because it's the most available that's out there. And wired Ethernet gets right in, and it seems to be the fastest and work. Wireless Ethernet link, this is what we use on Palomar Mountain, because we don't have wired available to us conveniently. And what we did is, and here we're using the Ubiquiti wireless links, and we have 2 of them up there because we installed a failover router. And each of the failover router, those who are not familiar with it, will have 2 internet connections to it, and with 1 internet connection, well, 1 connection out, 2 internet connections in, and it will have a primary internet connection that it uses. And if that one fails, it will immediately switch over to the other one. Now, we also have these in 2 different locations, the internet connection, and on 2 different service providers. So what we have to do, as we did with our repeater systems, is we have to go through and find out what is our weak link. And we found that our one of our major weak links was the internet connection. So this has reduced that weak link by probably 90%. If the internet goes out, it goes out, so it really doesn't make too much difference if you lose it altogether. But the failover router is one thing to look into. Now, something I've been looking into and been trying to do, and others, of us are also into installing hardened wireless links. I don't seem to get too many takers. They talk about it and say, yeah, hey, this sounds really cool, but there's a lot of barriers to this as to cost of setting it up and so forth, whether we go with a 900 megahertz link, or I think if we go with the the 70 centimeter links, 70 centimeter VARA FM, that we can even use 70 centimeter links, so we can go through trees and this kind of thing and tie a bunch of these together. So in the event that the internet does go out during a disaster or whatever, we still have the wireless links that we can use to tie things together. One thing we were going to do is our N2DDS11 up there is tie that one to OTI, which is already tied to what's the other one up there? It escapes me at the moment. Anyway, tie those together wirelessly or with a wired link, but tie them together with a wireless link, or use the Hardened system or something to that effect. But anyway, I think that's something that really needs to be investigated. All right, antennas. Now, antennas is something that I'm not going to get into too much because this is going to be by location. We use up on N2DDS10, it's sitting up on top of an aluminum roof of our trailer that's up there. So it's got a good ground plane. So we have a little 3 dB single, I don't even remember who made the thing. It's about 18 inches tall or so, a 70 centimeter antenna, and nobody seems to have any problems reaching that. N2DDS11 is also on top of a steel building, and it's a 6 dB gain antenna up there at 70 centimeter, and it's just an automotive antenna, and most people have no problem reaching that. What we have to do, and if you have issues as far as ground planes are concerned, what we're going to put up on over in San Marcos is Cushcraft makes a little ring antenna that's 70 centimeters, about 18 inches tall, and you don't really need a ground plane on that. So if you're just setting these up at home or so and you put them out on your balcony or something like that, you don't have to worry about a ground plane. They're only a 3 dB gain, but that seems to be adequate, particularly if there's enough VARA FM systems around. Anyway, those are what we did.
So something, So something else to consider, like for antennas, if you're gonna place it like somewhere in like the mountains or whatever, then you'll probably have to take wind into account as well, because the last thing you want to do is set up like a basic mobile antenna and have it go down during a Santa Ana wind event or something. So but that may not be like that big of a factor for everyone. I figured I'd just put that out there.
That's an excellent point. In fact, we considered that on N2DDS11 because that is high wind area. So what we did is we put that antenna on a magnetic mount, because it was going to a steel building, a magnetic mount, and I don't remember who makes it, but those 3 giant magnets, and believe me, it takes 2 people to remove that magnet. So that we did have to get around that for that, but that's an excellent point, Munir. Okay, on the transceiver, and this I'm probably going to spend a bit of time, most of the time on the transceiver here. Highly recommend wideband capable. You want to set up as wideband because you can do both wideband, anybody with wideband, and if they only have narrowband, they can also get into it. I first believed that, wait a minute, I have to be able to set my DRA 50 when I'm using that in my home station, go between the wideband and the narrowband. No, you don't. You keep setting it up for wideband, and if it takes wideband, great. If the person only has narrowband, the wideband also accepts the narrowband. But if you've only got a narrowband gateway, you're not going to get into it with wideband. Am I right, Munir, on that?
I think like both sides will negotiate to the lowest common. So like if the gateway is only narrow, for example, then like the user's trying to connect to will automatically, the VARA application will automatically switch over to the narrow.
Okay, then that's probably moot. But again, go wideband so that us who are using wideband can use it. you're going to want on your radios. I like the pre-installed. You're going to have to put out the money for a pre-installed data jacks. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a lot of work with radios that are going to where you've got to do some modifications to go into the microphone jack, to the speaker jacks and so forth, and so forth. And that's a little beyond my wheelhouse. So I like to do something that's a little more plug and play. And these are some radios right here. The Yaesu FTM 400 has that, and where you goes directly into the data jack. There are others, but these were the primary ones. The Kenwood, the TMV71, and the TMD710G. And of course, the three Alincos, and then the ICOM, the IC208, and the IC7100. And the thing of it is the Yaesu FTM 400 is retailing now for about $550. The Kenwood TM-V71's retailing for about $470. They don't make the TM710G anymore. That's what I happen to use at home for communicating with VARA FM, but they don't make it anymore. Now the Alinco, you only have the DR135 to be able to use right now, so you're stuck on 2 meters. Because the 235 and 435 doesn't exist, and it sells right now for about $175. I'm sure if you search around, you can knock a couple dollars off of that. The ICOM IC208 isn't made anymore. And the IC7100 is selling for about $930. Again, these are prices, since our club paid for these, that are a bit out of our league. So we chose not to go this particular route. However, our go-to radio now for VARA FM gateways is the Motorola CDM750. Some people know of this radio. Most people never even heard of this radio. They are not made anymore. And a lot of people say, hey, I'm looking at Motorola. No, I'm never going to touch Motorola because I don't know how to program the things, and they're a booger, and Motorola charges like $300 a year for the software to program these, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, they're about $130 on eBay. All of our radios, our 2 radios came from eBay. Right now, at any given time, I see 3 or 4 of them out there, but anywhere between $110 to $150 on eBay. The sound card is going to be the RIM Max Track USB 7600 from Repeater Builder. And most of you have heard of Repeater Builder. If you haven't, go to it and spend some time on the website. I'm going to come back and talk about those. Now, this is extremely critical. The range that you want if you purchase these radios, and they're not going to last long because they're getting to be people are realizing, hey, wait a minute, these are great radios for VARA FM gateways. And but you got to go, if you're going on 70 centimeter, with the 403 to 470 centimeter range. That is the model number you want. Do not use any other model number. If you don't want to write it down now, don't write it down, because this is being recorded and you can look at it later. There are a lot of them out there. There's probably at any given time, there's 100 Motorola CDM750s out there, and they range anything from 6 meters all the way to 900 megahertz. So you've got to watch and make sure they're in that range. A lot of them are in the public service channels that go from 450 up to, I think, 520. And you don't want that one, obviously, because you can't, that I'm aware of, nobody's been able to find a way to modify those to bring them down into the ham bands. And then, of course, there's those that are in the lower frequencies. They have those in the 2 meter band also, if you want to go that route. But anyway, to program these things, this is anybody can do this. The programming software is the CPS is the customer programming software is version R06.12.05. Do not deviate from that. Anything later than that that is available will only program your radios for narrow band. You have to purchase, and it's fairly expensive to purchase the upgrade to that software to program wideband. There are no other advantages to the later software. This is the last software that allows you to program either narrowband or wideband. Anything earlier than this, I've had a hard time getting installed on different computers. Now, the caveat on this is, and you'll be happy to know about something in a moment, the caveat on this is it requires installation on a computer that's 32-bit. It will not run on a 64-bit machine, even if you put it in 32-bit mode. It will not operate. I happen to have had an old XP machine that I use for a couple of other hardware items. It runs perfectly on that because it's a 32-bit machine. I have never operated this on a on a version 7 or a 10 meter, but I'm told that it does operate on those on 32-bit, but I don't know anybody that has a 32-bit Windows 7 or Windows 10 machine. But you can sure try it. So, but your question's going to be, where do you get it? Well, go to N2DDS, go to valleycenterarc.org. I will say no more than that. And you can download it. And you say, well, gee, Motorola doesn't like you doing that. Well, it's okay for me to do that because I did find other sources on the internet where this is available. And if they are able to do it, I just borrowed from their sources to do it. So, hey, go with God and have fun with it. The power output of these particular radios is from 0 to 25 watts. We have ours set at 20 watts. And that's all programmable into it. I can go over at some point, if somebody wants to install this CPS on a computer that they happen to have, I can go over with them how to operate. It's extremely simple to run, but there's a few little tricks. And I figured all those particular tricks out. Most of the tricks that you have to know is what not to do, not necessarily what to do. Now, I don't like to advertise for people, and I am not advertising at this particular point, but this definitely deserves a point. The cable that you're programming cable you're going to want is the RKN 4081. And I highly recommend, if you're going to buy this cable, if you want to spend several $100s, you can buy it from Motorola. It is still available from Motorola. I purchase all of my without exception, all of my cables from Mark Dunkel at Blue Max 49ers. You can look him up on the internet. Do not deviate from that, in my opinion. Every cable I've ever purchased from him, and anyone that I know that has purchased from him, has never had an issue. But you get some of this stuff that claims to work from China or so, you're going to have issues. You will never have a problem with his, and his cables run $20 to $30, and every cable known to man you can purchase from Mark Dunkel. He pretty much has everything, and he's up in the Bay Area. So you order it one day, generally you'll have it the next or the day after that. Anyway, let's move on here. This is the picture of the transceiver, the CDM750. It's very simple. It has 4 channels, but on a gateway, how many channels do you need? We use 1 channel. I set up the second channel right here and here. I set up the second channel for testing purposes when I'm setting up to make sure that the volumes and so forth is set properly onto our repeater and into DDS 10. But the first one is the channel that I set up for whatever gateway frequency you want to use, because when you turn it on, the thing defaults to channel 1. So that's the one you're going to want to use. It's got nice big heat sinks in the back. Now, if this is used a lot, this machine's going to get hot too. There is, and I'll just tell you about it. I don't have any information here on it. There is available on eBay specifically for this, and it actually comes out of the radio club out of Seattle. Somebody up there makes it. That is a clip-on, the clip that goes back here where you can add a fan to keep this thing cool. I have not done that because N2DDS11 isn't used that much, but it's still, if it's going to be used as much as 10 is, let me tell you something, that gets hot. But the fans on here do keep it fairly cool. I have lowered the power from 25 watts down to 20 watts. So I'm, and it's in a really relatively cool environment, so I'm not overly concerned. The antenna port is right here, and it uses the wonky I don't remember what they call it, but it's antenna. These are available on eBay or Amazon as a conversion to a UHF connector to go to your antenna, converter. And then of course this is the power connector, and that's got the normal Motorola power connector, which is available on eBay or on Amazon. Now this is the sound card, and the sound card is really cool. It plugs directly into the back right here, directly into the back of the radio. And then here is the USB port that goes and connects directly to your computer right here. There are the DRA50, as you know, if you've gotten into that, has 3 adjustments, potentiometers, extremely sensitive. Personally, I don't like it because if he had a 10-turn pots in that thing, but it increased the price of it considerably, it would be a lot easier to adjust them. But this has no pots on it at all, no jumpers on it. It's not necessary. All of the adjustments for the transmit and the receive are all done on your computer in the sound adjustments on the receive and the transmit. Are all done there and very easy to adjust. Again, this comes from the RAM that comes from Repeater Builder. And you say, well, wait a minute, I really want to support Kevin Custer, who makes the DRA50. He makes these also. It's my understanding Masters Communication that makes these also owns the Repeater Builder website. At least that's what my understanding is. So I don't feel bad. Oh, and by the way, these guys are $50 assembled. You don't assemble these; those are all surface mount. These are $50. The DRA50s, I think, are what, $110, $120. So and they just plug right into the back, and it's a plug and play. Okay, here is, and this was just a picture I took. It's kind of funky right here, but again, it gets the idea. Here's our power supply on the bottom. Our radio right here, and again, the microphone, when you buy these, they generally don't come with a microphone, and even if it does, you're going to throw it away anyway. You don't need the microphone. And here's the radio right here. Now here's the little, here's how it connects right here to the back of the computer anyway, this one, anyway, it goes someplace. Anyway, this connects to the dongle in this kind of see in the back right here. Or to the sound card in the back, connects to the computer, to the back of connects to the computer right here. And anyway, you get the point. And of course, the other USB port that you need is going to be for your keyboard and your mouse, which you're not going to leave on the hill. I take those with me and take them from place to place because you don't need to leave them up there. So you take one. The same thing also with the with your monitor. You just want a monitor that'll plug into the HDMI port, and we have just a small little monitor that we take with us and to go from station to station. So you don't need to leave that there either because it'll just keep running for you. Now, there is one other thing that is incredibly important to consider, and some of you have probably thought of it already. What do you do when the system goes down and you have to go up and you have to reset it? Say you forgot to turn off the reinstalls or the Microsoft updates. And you say, wait a minute, I have to go all the way up to Palomar, go an hour to wherever it is I need to go and restart this thing. And well, there's something to consider is exactly that. I have these installed on Palomar so that I can reset the whole system when necessary remotely. And we start out with this, there's several of them available. We use the KMC smart little hockey pucks. And these things, and then on that, and these things we can turn on and off remotely. And basically it's a jack that you can plug a light into or something into and remotely turn with your cell phone, turn it on and off. You say, well, gee, how's that going to help me with the, resetting the system? Well, what I did is I just hot glued a relay onto the back of a 12-volt wall wart. And it doesn't have to be a very big one. This is just what I happen to have in the junk pile. I just happen to have these in the junk pile, but it has to be a double pole, single throw. We use double pole, who cares? But these guys are a couple of bucks. They don't have to have a lot of power. They can use almost anything here. I happen to use 12 volts because I had 12 volts. Use 5-volt ones if you want to. Some of those might be more available. So that this wall wart turns on and off this relay. So if the power goes out, when the power is on, this relay is activated. And since we use the normally closed port, the normally closed connection, the connection remains that goes to the power to the system. If the power goes out, it stays normally closed and the power remains to it. When you reset this turns on, which turns this thing off. And now you have a normally open connect. Now it goes to an open connection. That turns your system off. Then you turn it back on again, or excuse me, you turn it back off again, and then this whole system turns off, and then the normally closed connection comes back together, and you and now your system powers back up. Now, obviously, you don't need to. Obviously, you don't, and it just clicks together like this. You obviously. Anyway, don't need to go there. But anyway, this is what we use, or I put together to be able to remotely control these things, to turn them on and off. And you only need to turn on and off your computer. I'd recommend turning the radio if you use the 750. Turn off the radio also that has the sound card attached to it. I don't know that the sound card requires any resetting, but the computer does, whether it's cosmic rays or whatever does it. Sometimes you need to just reset your computer, and you notice you need to do that at home, or your anything you have at home oftentimes needs to be reset. So anyway, this is a way, and you only need to power those items to turn them on and off. Okay, that's all I've got. I'm going to stop the share. If anybody has any questions on that, and that wasn't overly confusing.
Great, Excellent presentation, Mike.
Good. My voice started getting a little weird at the end, so I hope it didn't interfere too much.
You're good. A question on the CPS software. I was going to ask if there was actually a matrix of what that was compatible with, because I'm taking a guess based on the version number that you showed. And I know your comment was that was the last release that would support the higher bandwidth capabilities instead of narrow banding the radio. It's very likely from what you described that that's probably intended for a Windows XP and maybe some of the Windows 7 systems, probably not going to be easily compatible with anything newer. You had commented though any version after that wouldn't support
It does not.
broadbanding?
It does not support wideband.
Okay.
And this is something that Motorola, again, which is typical of Motorola, they put in. I mean, it does do wideband. It's just that you have to buy a software key
Right.
in order to be able to open that up. And this was just for them to be able to make more money.
Totally on spot, and that answers the question. I was going to say, is it a matter of having to go out and have the most current either subscription or features, which usually come at some premium that you've got to buy at least once? You got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I have not tried that on 7 or 10 or 11 or anything else because I had an old XP machine, runs perfectly. If anybody has an old XP machine, go for it. I mean, install it, put it on there, and works just fine. And if you say, hey, wait a minute, I don't have one, I don't know anybody that has one. Yeah, you do know somebody that has one. You just have to be able to make a phone call or email me, and I'll be happy to take care of it for you. And at least until the machine craps out.
A lot of us have legacy machines for reasons exactly like that, because we don't have any choices. Any additional questions for Mike? I wasn't watching chat. Did we cover everything in chat?
Yeah, I think we covered everything in chat.
Good deal.
All right. Well,
congratulations, Mike. I think you're going to have the new highest rated YouTube viewer
I
presentation.
I don't know about that, but like I say, I really hope some people get on and be able to do this, and you can put a system together for between retail and buying these radios. If you oh, and by the way, using that radio was not. I'll tell you how I got it. When I couldn't get the Alinco radios and could not find them anymore. You can buy them, but they're at a premium. They're what? The Monair probably, I looked them up and they're on eBay for what, $400, $350. They're used and they are at a premium. So if you're going to do that, just get one of the other ones. But with these radios, they're bulletproof. But I got the ideas. I called Mike Burton. I said, Mike, I got a problem here. I'm ready to install 2 more, but I don't have any radios. I can't get the radios, and I am not in a remote system on a gateway going to spend $1,000 or $500 to $1,000 on a radio. So he's called. Oh God, I can't think of his name right now. Up in Seattle, it's one of the Winlink developers. Scott. I can't think of it right now. Anyway, it'll come to me when I can least expect it. And he called him up, and Scott got back to me, and he says, what we use up in Seattle for about 10 gateways up there are these CDM 750s. He said, we use these, but you're going to have to locate the software someplace. So I did a lot of the research, and I tell you something, it took me weeks to find that software someplace on the website. And there are other locations to get it. I just don't feel real comfortable in giving it out right now, but I don't have a problem. My attitude, screw Motorola when they're trying to screw everybody else, excuse the expressions, but I have no problem of giving that software out for people that want it. So
So
anyway,
you brought
that's,
up,
go ahead.
you brought up an interesting point regarding the radios, and before folks get gung ho into doing things like this, bear in mind that the used radio market is incredibly overpriced right now. I've seen 25 and 30-year-old radios on eBay and other auction sites and other social media sites that are being sold virtually for twice what they were brand new 25 and 30 years ago. And it's not that it's a collector's item. People are saying it's worth that much money. It's like, well, as Mike illustrated at the beginning of the presentation, the Alincos were probably a pretty solid baseline for a single band, reasonably current technology radios. Those Alincos have gone through a couple of version releases, but the lineage of those probably goes back at least 10 years. So any of the things that was in the 135, 235, 435 series, those are like 10-year-old radios that have had a couple of modifications along the way, because sometimes parts become unattainable and suddenly you've got a Mark II or a Mark III version. Great radios, but that was a good price point for the radio. And to the point that was made, I'm seeing those 2 and 3 times what the real brand new retail price was for a used radio. And it's just because. So be careful. Don't be so anxious that you're going to fall prey to spending 3 times as much as the radio is really worth in real life. Mike's point about running the radio at low power is very relevant. The lower you can go out and run those things, the longer they're going to last from a transmitter perspective. I've seen some of those Alincos that have been in service for better than 25 years. They're outstanding radios, and some of the other older technologies are as well. Just got to take care of them.
Yeah, but if you're considering going with this and using those radios, the quantity of them on eBay for those Motorola's is dwindling. Showing up periodically, so you might have to spend a little time searching around. Okay, this one looks good, but look at about the $130 range, and be sure you do not pick a different model number, because you'll be hating life if you do. But look in that price range for it, and or chisel the guy down if he's raising the price on them. I didn't look this morning, but about a week ago there were 3 or 4 of them out there, and they don't last very long. They're out there because guys are beginning to realize, wait a minute, these are work great for gateways, and of course eBay is nationwide, so anybody that's using them. And I have a suspicion that somebody who decides to watch this YouTube, they're going to get snatched up real fast. So if anybody really wants to do it, to get into it and use those radios, I'd get on eBay almost immediately and just keep searching and searching until finally you find one that's there. There were 3 of them 3 days ago, so all sold by the same person at $130 each. And I said, I was thinking about picking them up myself, but I don't need any more, and the club is paying for it, so I'm not going to buy them for somebody else. If somebody really wants to do this, they're going to have to do a little bit of legwork themselves.
And on that same note, these are used radios. They get surplused out to the market. Usually these things are fleet radios. Someone's got school system, bus, taxi, some public service utility, whatever it happens to be. And when they move on to a different service or change services, all of the radios get pulled at some point. Usually they're auctioned off for very literally little money, and then people buy up those and hope that they work, turn them, flip them, do whatever they're doing on eBay, and then they come up with that baseline price that Mike had mentioned. So I'm glad that you were able to find the CPS, because the CPS software by itself is usually an arm wrestling match for the radio. And it almost makes it an arguable point. Do I need to buy a radio plus buy software, right? So you got away very well on doing the CPS version that you found that worked. Otherwise, you have to think about what's the cost of an actual ham radio that's got convenient interface capabilities, 6-pin jack in the back. That way I don't have to buy a radio, don't have to buy an interface, and potentially don't have to buy the CPS software. And by the time you do that, you might be into an older ham radio that's got a 6-pin jack, or maybe even a more current ham radio that's got a 6-pin jack. So those are trade-off values for building the system out as well. And I'm glad you illustrated all of those, Mike.
Oh, you bet.
Any other questions or thoughts for Mike before we wrap it up? All right, Rob, if you're ready, closing and parting comments, and I'll let you wrap the recording up.
No further comments. I'll leave it open for a couple of minutes just in case people want to say hello to a friend or something, work out a sidebar or something. So we'll wrap it up. Thank you, Bruce.
And thanks everyone for participating today and stopping by. If you were stopping by, Mike, excellent presentation again. Thank you so much.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.